The lunchbox entered the office quietly, the same way Daniel Harper lived his life, unnoticed and unremarkable to most people, a plain blue container with a cracked corner placed gently inside the shared refrigerator before the sun had fully risen. Because Daniel always arrived early, earlier than required, not to impress anyone but because empty offices made him feel calm, like the world had not yet asked anything from him. He moved through the office halls with practiced ease, greeting no one loudly, nodding politely, settling at his desk with a coffee he brewed himself every morning, strong and slightly sweet, the way his late wife Emily used to make it. Cooking had become Daniel's silent ritual after she passed away 2 years earlier, not as a hobby but as a way to survive the evenings, because the quiet of his apartment could become unbearable, and chopping vegetables or stirring soup gave his hands something to do while his mind wandered through memories he did not dare speak out loud. That morning, the lunch he packed was simple but thoughtful: roasted chicken seasoned with herbs, mashed potatoes whipped smooth, and steamed vegetables arranged carefully, as if someone else might see them, as if the act of care itself mattered more than who ate it. He sealed the lunchbox, slipped it into his bag, and walked into work unaware that a single mistake would change the shape of his ordinary day. By mid-morning, the office buzzed with tension, an unexpected visit from upper management forcing meetings to shift and schedules to tighten, and Daniel was called away suddenly to assist with reports, leaving his lunch untouched in the fridge. When noon arrived, hunger pulled people from their desks in waves, and Megan Collins, cheerful and distracted as always, opened the refrigerator without looking closely, grabbing the blue lunchbox she assumed was hers, thinking nothing of it as she carried it into the executive break room where Sarah Mitchell, the department head, stood staring at her phone with a tired expression that came from years of responsibility layered over personal disappointment. Sarah rarely ate lunch on time, or at all, often skipping meals as emails piled up and decisions waited, but that day her stomach reminded her sharply that she was human, and when Megan offered the food with an apologetic laugh, Sarah hesitated only a second before accepting, telling herself it was practical, nothing more. The first bite stopped her completely, the noise of the office fading as warmth spread through her chest, not just from the food but from the care behind it, the balance of flavors speaking of patience and intention rather than convenience, and she slowed, surprised by how much she needed that feeling. She took another bite, then another, and without thinking, without guarding her words the way she always did, she smiled and said softly that she wished she had a husband who could cook like this, not as a joke but as a simple truth spoken aloud for the first time. The room fell quiet, Megan's smile faltered, and realization dawned as she checked the lunchbox more closely, the name written faintly on the inside lid making her heart sink, because it wasn't hers at all. She admitted the mistake quickly, saying the lunch belonged to Daniel Harper, the quiet one from the project team, and Sarah's expression shifted from amusement to curiosity, then to something deeper she did not name. She returned to her office later, still thinking about the meal, about how strange it was that something so small could remind her of everything she did not have: shared evenings, thoughtful gestures, someone who showed love without needing attention for it. Meanwhile, Daniel returned to his desk hours later, tired but composed, opening the fridge out of habit only to find his lunch missing, and though disappointment flickered briefly, he pushed it aside, telling himself it didn't matter, because he had learned not to expect small comforts to remain his for long. What he did not know was that his quiet act of care had already reached someone who felt just as alone, someone who carried her own unspoken longing beneath professional confidence, and as the office lights hummed and keyboards clicked, a simple lunchbox had already begun to connect two lives that believed they were done being noticed. Daniel Harper returned to his desk after a long morning of meetings, his mind occupied with spreadsheets and project updates, unaware of the ripple his lunch had caused in the executive break room, and though he usually kept to himself, his calm routine was about to be interrupted in a way he had not anticipated, because Sarah Mitchell, the department head, was walking toward his cubicle, holding the familiar blue lunchbox with a gentle, careful grip that made it clear she understood its value, and Daniel looked up, slightly surprised but polite, nodding as she approached, curious about the sudden visit. Sarah, normally confident and commanding, seemed softer today, her voice carrying a rare warmth as she said she owed him both an apology and a thank you, and Daniel raised an eyebrow, unsure what to expect, Because he was not accustomed to personal acknowledgments from people in leadership, having spent years staying in the background, blending into the office, focused on work rather than recognition. The lunch, Sarah began, a slight smile playing on her lips as she gestured toward the box. It was comforting, and Daniel, cautious but interested, simply nodded, keeping his tone polite yet measured, acknowledging her words without revealing too much, because he was careful about sharing personal feelings, especially at work, and he did not yet know how much of this moment was about the food itself or about the quiet connection that had formed unexpectedly. Sarah noticed the way he spoke, the subtle distance in his eyes, and despite her usual composure, she felt a stir of curiosity and empathy, realizing that this man who rarely drew attention had layers of experience and emotion hidden beneath his calm exterior, and she wanted to know more, not just as a boss, but as someone who recognized the rare softness behind someone's quiet strength. "You cook often?" she asked, her voice lighter now, mingled with genuine interest, and Daniel replied simply, "Every day. It helps me remember who I used to be," and he did not explain further, because some memories were sacred and not meant to be shared in full, yet his words were enough to make Sarah pause, to make her consider the life he had led, the loss he had endured, and the silent ways he coped with grief, and she realized that the food, the care, and the attention to detail in something as simple as a lunchbox were reflections of a heart that had loved deeply and still remembered. As the day went on, Sarah found herself thinking about that meal more than she expected, recalling the warmth, the comfort, and the quiet honesty it conveyed, and it stayed with her, lingering in moments between meetings, reminding her of the small, often forgotten joys of being cared for by another person, and she felt a pang of longing, recognizing how rare it was to encounter such simplicity paired with genuine emotion in a busy life. Meanwhile, Daniel returned home that evening to his quiet apartment, the rooms filled with the faint scents of herbs and spices he had used that morning, the memories of Emily washing over him as he washed the dishes, and he could not shake the feeling that something had shifted, that his small act of care had reached someone in a way he had never expected, sparking a quiet connection that was both fragile and powerful. He sat at his kitchen table, staring at the empty plate he had used for his own dinner, thinking about the smile on Sarah's face, the softness in her voice, and the way the words she spoke about wishing for someone who could cook had touched a place in his heart he thought was closed forever, and he realized that something new, something tender, was beginning to take shape between them, slowly and quietly, like the aroma of a simmering meal that promises comfort even before the first bite. The thought lingered, gentle but persistent, that perhaps this small, accidental sharing of a lunchbox could lead to something more meaningful, a bridge between two lonely hearts who had unknowingly been searching for warmth, companionship, and understanding in parallel lives, and for the first time in years, both Daniel and Sarah felt a flicker of anticipation, a quiet hope that life might have something gentle and real waiting for them, simply because a simple act of care had been noticed, appreciated, and remembered. After that day, small moments began to quietly weave Daniel and Sarah's lives together, subtle exchanges that carried more weight than words could describe, because the shared lunch had opened a door neither of them had expected, and the office, usually full of noise and deadlines, became a space where their glances and short conversations carried an unspoken understanding, like a secret language of mutual respect and curiosity. Sarah started asking questions about recipes, her tone casual but tinged with genuine interest, and Daniel found himself lingering at his desk longer, offering simple tips, explaining why a dish needed a pinch more salt or a longer simmer, all while keeping the conversation light, careful, and honest, because neither wanted to rush what was slowly growing between them. One evening, during a quiet moment in the office, Sarah admitted something she rarely shared with anyone. Her life was full of achievements, accolades, and responsibilities, yet in her pursuit of strength and success, she had forgotten how to be soft, how to let someone in, how to feel warmth that was not professional or transactional, and Daniel listened without interruption, his calm presence offering the comfort of a patient friend rather than a critic. He, too, shared, in a measured and gentle way, the memory of losing Emily, explaining how cooking kept him connected to the love he had known, without detailing the depth of his grief, but enough to let Sarah see the layers of his heart, the quiet devotion that had not faded despite time or loss. Their connection remained cautious but undeniably growing, each interaction carrying a mix of longing and restraint, as both recognized the loneliness mirrored in the other, the shared desire for companionship tempered by fear and respect for the past. Then, one afternoon, Megan, unaware of the delicate balance forming, made a joke in the middle of the office, loud enough for everyone to hear, teasing, "So Daniel, when are you cooking dinner for Sarah too?" The room erupted in laughter, and Daniel smiled politely, hiding the rush of emotion and apprehension that surged in him, while Sarah, though slightly amused, felt the stirrings of something more intense beneath the surface, a mix of embarrassment and awareness that what Megan had said was not entirely a joke, that perhaps their connection was being noticed even when neither of them had spoken it aloud. That evening, Daniel left work without packing a lunch, a small but meaningful gesture that did not go unnoticed by Sarah, who returned home with thoughts of him swirling in her mind, imagining the quiet strength he carried, the care he poured into simple acts, and the growing understanding that what they shared, though unspoken, had begun to shape their days, their expectations, and their hearts. They were two people cautiously approaching a new chapter, testing the waters of vulnerability, finding solace in small interactions, and learning that connection could develop quietly, persistently, and powerfully without grand gestures, just in the honest sharing of time, attention, and care. And in that slow unfolding, both Sarah and Daniel realized that the possibility of love was real, tentative but undeniable, like a simmering meal promising warmth and nourishment, waiting only for the courage to be tasted fully. The morning after the quiet tension and unspoken feelings that had been growing between them, Sarah arrived at the office to find a small paper bag on her desk, neatly folded, with a homemade muffin inside and a simple note that read, "I'm not ready to be someone's husband, but I'm ready to cook for someone again," and her heart skipped, the words carrying a vulnerability and honesty that touched her deeper than she expected, because it was not just the gesture of the food, but the courage it represented, the willingness to share a piece of oneself without demanding anything in return. She held the note in her hands for a long moment, feeling the weight of what it meant. Daniel had acknowledged the connection between them, admitted his own limitations, and offered kindness in the purest form, something rare in a world filled with rushed schedules, deadlines, and professional masks, and it stirred emotions in her that she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years, a mix of hope, longing, and a gentle warmth that made the office around her fade away for a moment. That evening, with the note still in her pocket and the muffin long eaten, she found herself standing at Daniel's apartment door, unsure whether to knock or retreat. But the anticipation and the quiet pull of shared understanding compelled her to lift her hand and ring the bell, and when the door opened, there was no pretense, no office hierarchy, just two people standing honestly, exposed in their emotions and cautiously approaching something fragile yet promising. They moved past small talk and professional walls, sitting at his modest kitchen table with the aroma of his cooking lingering in the air, sharing a simple meal in companionable silence, each bite carrying meaning beyond flavor, a language of care, patience, and understanding that neither had spoken aloud but both recognized immediately, and the quiet of the apartment seemed to wrap around them, offering a safe space for vulnerability, for laughter, for fleeting touches of reassurance that did not need to be named to be felt. The conversation flowed naturally, discussing favorite recipes, memories of family dinners, and little habits that made life comforting, yet beneath the ordinary words was a current of emotion, the slow realization that two hearts, once cautious and guarded, were learning to trust again, to lean toward each other without expectation, and to find warmth in shared moments that required nothing but presence and attention. Daniel explained in small ways how cooking had become his way to cope with loss, how the act itself was a bridge between memory and hope, and Sarah, listening, found herself drawn not only to the skill and care but to the tenderness and restraint in his voice, the quiet strength of a man who had loved and lost but had not closed his heart, and she realized that what she had been seeking for years was not just companionship, but someone who could understand and respect the quiet parts of life. The unspoken longings and gentle gestures, the moments that mattered more than grand declarations. The evening stretched, filled with the soft sounds of utensils, quiet laughter, and shared smiles, and it became clear that their connection was neither rushed nor forced, but deliberate, a careful dance of two people exploring the possibility of love while honoring the past, the pain, and the wisdom that came with it, and in that gentle unfolding, both Sarah and Daniel discovered the rare beauty of intimacy without pressure, the comfort of being seen, and the quiet joy of a bond formed through care, patience, and honesty. As the night deepened and the city outside twinkled with lights, they lingered at the table, neither wanting to break the fragile magic, knowing that love sometimes arrived slowly, without fireworks, without dramatic gestures, but in small, deliberate actions. A muffin, a note, a shared meal, a glance that said more than words, and in that simplicity, both realized that the blue lunchbox, once just a container of food, had become a symbol of connection, hope, and the beginning of something tender and real, a promise of companionship nurtured carefully, a gentle reminder that love can arrive in quiet, unexpected ways when two hearts are finally ready to notice it, embrace it, and let it grow.